In a stunning turn of events, Kamala Harris is campaigning in the Democrat state of New Hampshire. What's up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back in with a new video, and today, it appears that the Democrat Party's in a complete panic as Kamala Harris campaigns in New Hampshire. That's not a misquote. You did not mishear me. The Kamala Harris campaign thought to themselves, you know what, we have to campaign in New Hampshire, which, by the way, back in 2020, voted for Biden by over 7 points. Yeah, apparently, the Harris campaign has to spend time here instead of campaigning in, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, even a state like North Carolina. They decided we have to stop in New Hampshire for whatever reason, which, by the way, the rally in New Hampshire, which is a Democrat state, we're not talking about Maine 2nd where it's a Republican area. No, this is New Hampshire. This is a Democrat state, and she campaigned in, I believe, Manchester? I could be wrong, but it was a Democrat area. Well, apparently, the campaign rally had pathetic turnout. Now, the pictures don't look bad on paper. Like, okay, this is a picture of the rally, and there's probably 1,000 people here, which, compared to Trump, is nothing, because Trump rallies get, 10,000 people at the bare minimum. But you could argue, well, it's New Hampshire, and it's not a big deal that the crowd size isn't that big, because New Hampshire is a smaller state. Which, fine, whatever. That's not the big deal, by the way. Like, who cares what the crowd size is? The problem for Harris is, well, apparently, a bunch of these people are not even from New Hampshire. You can't make this up. The Harris campaign got exposed for busing in supporters from Massachusetts. In other words, people that don't even live in New Hampshire. Yeah, they brought in, I believe, like 12 to 13 buses filled with people into New Hampshire. Think about that. They brought in hundreds of people to a rally in New Hampshire. People from Massachusetts. It's not like they were from a different part of the state. That's one thing. Like, okay, whatever. If they're from the northern part of New Hampshire or whatever, that's one thing. But you have to cross state lines to bring supporters into the state? When these people they don't live here, they won't vote in New Hampshire? You're telling me that you have to bus people in from Massachusetts, a very Democrat state? And we're not talking about New Hampshire as a 50-50 state. New Hampshire, as of now, is a Democrat state, at least on paper. So, in theory, Harris should have no problem having a crowd of like 1,000 people. But it was such pathetic turnout that they had to bus in hundreds, if not thousands of people into New Hampshire for one event. Which, by the way, makes this crowd size even more pathetic. Because, let's just say, half of this crowd is from Massachusetts. Well, you're talking about what? Maybe 500 people? Maybe 300 people at most? You see the problem? Because if that's the case, that half of the crowd came from Massachusetts, well, Harris might be in deep trouble in New Hampshire. It might be a sign of a lack of enthusiasm. Which, I'm not saying Harris is gonna lose New Hampshire, but if she's struggling in New Hampshire, what do you think's happening in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia? This really proves that Harris's momentum and enthusiasm surge, it's all artificial. It's not real. Because if it was real, she should have no problem having a rally in New Hampshire. I'm not saying she should have 30,000 people at the rally, but you're telling me that turnout was so pathetic in New Hampshire that you had to bus people in from Massachusetts. Yeah. This isn't like Trump or Obama where they could bring in 50,000 people for sure. Not in New Hampshire, but in other states. Kamala Harris is lucky to bring in like 5,000 people. And in New Hampshire, she could bring in barely 1,000, with half the crowd being from Massachusetts. Isn't that crazy that Obama and Trump, they have real enthusiasm, or Obama did, obviously, but Trump has real enthusiasm. It's not artificial. It's not bullshit. The Harris campaign, meanwhile, they're so enthusiastic that the Harris campaign basically has to force people on a bus and go to New Hampshire just to have a decent-sized crowd. Think about that. It makes you really wonder, hey, what about those crowd sizes in Wisconsin and Nevada and Arizona? What if they were from the Democrat states near them, like Illinois to Wisconsin, like California to Nevada? It makes you really wonder, like, wait, were the crowd sizes in a place like Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, were these even people from those states? Or were these people from, like, California that decided, you know what, I want to go to the Harris rally in Las Vegas, or people from Chicago that went to Milwaukee for Harris's rally? If that's the case, she's in deep trouble, and might explain why Democrats in recent days, it seems like they've had a change of tune. Like, a couple of weeks ago, they were all saying Kamala Harris will win in a landslide, she's going to win every state, it's be a historical victory, all of that. But in recent days, you might have noticed that Democrats, they're kind of, I wouldn't say dooming just yet, but they're not as confident. And it makes you really wonder, what do the private polls show? Like the internals. Do they have Harris down in a state like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania? What's happening here? Because it makes you really wonder, why is she campaigning in New Hampshire? If she was really up by 15 points in every state, she should not be in New Hampshire. Don't even look at the state. Ignore it completely. Maybe if it was like July, you do one event there, that's one thing. But this is September. We are 2 months away from Election Day, and she's doing campaign events in New Hampshire. Makes you really wonder, well, what are the polls really showing? Because if she has to play defense in New Hampshire, what do you think's happening in a state like Wisconsin, a state like Pennsylvania? Because New Hampshire, by most accounts, should be a Democrat state. Demographically wise, it's super friendly to someone like Harris. It's a Democrat state now. It voted for Biden by over 7. It should be an easy win for Harris. But if she's struggling there, what do you think's happening in the real swing states? And it makes you really wonder, what's happening here? Is Trump actually competitive in New Hampshire? Which the recent polls, they don't show Harris doing all that well. Like, yeah, the average is Harris plus 5, but compared to 2020, this is pathetic. This is a swing of like 2 to 3 points Republican. When in reality, it should be shifting Democrat. Because demographically speaking, New Hampshire's getting more Democrat. A lot of people from Boston are moving into the state, and they're taking their voting habits with them. But by some miracle, Kamala Harris is actually doing worse than Biden here. How is that even possible? If Harris is really doing 50 points better with white college-educated voters, how the hell is she only up by 5 points here? How? Because guess what? She can't be. If she's really doing that much better with whites with college degrees, she should be up by 15 points in New Hampshire. Not by 4, not by 5, not by 6. It should be a 10-point lead at the bare minimum. Especially considering it's New Hampshire. It's a trending Democrat state. But somehow, Harris is barely up by 5 points here. And it makes you really think, like, what's going on here? And there's other polls in other Democrat states, like Minnesota. Harris plus 4. And that's actually Virginia, excuse me. It's Harris plus 4 in Virginia. Minnesota, Harris plus 5. All 3 of these states are Democrat states. Yet, according to the public polling, which we all know they can be off by quite a bit, they have Harris doing worse in every single one of these states. Even Minnesota. Harris's lead went from plus 10 to plus 5 in 1 month. And that's after she picked Tim Walz. Think about that. Picking the governor of Minnesota hurt Kamala Harris in the polling. I'm not saying that that means Trump's going to win Minnesota, but how the hell do you accomplish that? How? These numbers are just pathetic for Harris in Democrat states. Yet I'm supposed to believe that Trump is down in Wisconsin? Down in Michigan? Down in Pennsylvania? If he's doing this much better in New Hampshire, Minnesota, and especially Virginia, I mean, look at this. He's down by only 4 points here. That's a 6-point shift from 2020. Yet I'm supposed to believe that Kamala Harris is up in Wisconsin, up in Michigan. Yet she's doing worse in Virginia, worse in Minnesota, and hell, just outright campaigning in New Hampshire. But I'm supposed to believe that every other swing state is super Democrat now. Bullcrap. And I'm really starting to believe that the Democrats are realizing they have a big problem. Because why would Harris be in New Hampshire? And on top of that, just actually the same day, just like 2 hours before the rally, it was announced the Harris campaign was giving $25 million towards down-ballot races. She's campaigning in New Hampshire, Virginia, and Minnesota. But on top of all that, she's giving money to down-ballot races. Now, the Democrat cope is, well, she wants to win the House. She wants to win the Senate. Okay, that could be the reason. But most times this happens where the campaign focuses so much on down-ballot races, it's because they realize, oh crap, we are in deep trouble. We are going to get crushed in the House. We're going to get crushed in the Senate. We're getting crushed everywhere. That's usually the philosophy when campaigns do this. Because they don't usually say, you know what, spend $25 million on down-ballot races because we're going to expand the House majority. That's bullshit. Because if you want to expand the House majority, just win. That's all you got to do. As a presidential candidate, all you have to care about is winning. But if you're down by a lot, that's when it makes sense to, start focusing on down-ballot races, focusing in on deep blue or deep red states, because at that point, you're not winning. At that point, you're just trying to prevent an electoral landslide. You're trying to not lose every state. That's what that usually means when campaigns start talking about, yeah, we need to defend down-ballot races. It could be different here, but every time a campaign does this, they talk about defending down-ballot races, preventing a landslide. That usually means they know they're down. And I'm starting to wonder if the Harris campaign is realizing this because, well, not even 2 hours before this was announced and like 3 hours before the Harris campaign had the rally in New Hampshire, there was a leaked internal from, I believe, a right-wing organization. I don't know for sure. But it's not one of those leaked internals that are meant for fundraising. This is an actual internal poll. This is a private poll that's conducted for a reason. It's meant for gauging actual support, not for fundraising. Well, Trump is up in Pennsylvania, actually tied in Pennsylvania, up in Michigan, up in Nevada, and down in Wisconsin by a point or so. And Guy Benson reported that apparently this is the beginning of a Trump surge they're noticing in private polling. Because for a little bit there, Harris was picking up steam, but in recent days, it sounds like, oh yeah, the trends have completely reversed, and each passing day, it gets worse for the Harris campaign. Now, does this mean Trump is winning every swing state? No. But the more you look into what's happening here, the more it seems like the Harris campaign, they're playing defense. And not just in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, but in New Hampshire, in Virginia, in Minnesota. Why would you be on the defense if you're up everywhere? Why? It's because they know they're probably down and they're realizing that, oh, wait, our copium from last month of us winning every swing state, yeah, that really was just copium. We were never up by that much. It was just an enthusiasm surge. That's it. That's what it sounds like. Hell, you have Democrat operatives admit to Mark Halperin that, oh yeah, we are absolutely getting crushed in Pennsylvania. We're not talking about, we're slightly down, but we can win. No, apparently, Democrats in Pennsylvania, they're in a complete panic. They're getting crushed. They're down by like 5 points. Apparently, I'm not saying that's the case, but why would Democrat operatives who work for the Harris campaign and Democrats admit that they're getting crushed in Pennsylvania? Why? And this is a reliable source, not just some, I had a vision last week that had Harris down in Pennsylvania. No, apparently these are people on the ground that know what they're talking about. And then you had reports of the Harris campaign, regretting not picking Shapiro because they're down in Pennsylvania. And this was all in the same, morning. It was all yesterday morning. First, the internal got leaked. Then you had the fundraising go to down-ballot races. Then you have this. It's like, wait a minute. If this was all bullshit, why is this all happening at once? It's because, in my opinion, Democrats are realizing they are in deep trouble. They're realizing that their enthusiasm surge that they had in late August, and early August, I should say, is gone. But we just got to see what happens. Again, it's possible that this is all fake news, but The more you read into what's happening here, the fact that she's in New Hampshire, they're admitting to giving $25 million to down ballot races, the fact their internals are leaking and they're not looking good for Harris, makes you really wonder, are Republicans in a good position? Are Democrats just screwed? We just got to see what happens, but it's not sounding good for the Harris campaign at all. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.